Happy Sunday and welcome back to Scholarship Tea with me, the Scholarship College Mama. Today we have a very special guest, Miss Samantha Bazile is how I pronounce your last name?
Correct.
Yay!
Got it. Yes.
All right. Samantha, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Laverne? Thank you for
I'm
having me.
great. I do appreciate you coming on here to talk. Please introduce yourself and let the people know who you are, what you do, and what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. So my name is Samantha Bazile. I work at St. Thomas Aquinas College, which is a small private college, liberal arts college in New York. I currently am the director of student engagement and the chief diversity officer there at STAC. That's what we refer to it as, St. Thomas Aquinas College, the acronyms. I've been there for 19 years in a multiple capacities. However, I did most of my career in admissions. So I started as an admissions counselor after graduating college, and I worked my way up to director of admissions, where I served as director of admissions for 8 years. So
Wow.
I know a lot about the admissions process from the private side of things, but also just the general side of things as well. I know a lot about the financial aid process as well, and just about college in general, being in it as long as I have. I also have a college age student. She is 21 going into her senior year right now. So I have also been on the other side going through the process and still going through the process of having a current college student and everything that comes with that. So that's a little bit about me. I think today we're going to be talking about the application and the application process, financial aid, some tips that parents can learn from and students can learn from preparing for college and ensuring that they have coverage in every way possible. And then anything else that we want to go into or however the conversation goes, we will take it there.
Awesome.
Mhm,
Awesome. Let's first of all, wow, amazing.
mhm.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And I'm glad you're here with your college admissions officer cap on because I think a lot of times parents think like that office is a mystery. We don't know how you all formulate and figure out and do what you do. For example, the Common App is now open. Kids are starting to create their accounts and starting to fill in information. And I just saw a TikTok and Instagram video of a mom who has two kids. One got into Wake Forest, one got into Vanderbilt, and they're sharing their stats. Now, these kids are amazing. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm talking top of the top ACT scores,
Yep.
sports, high involvement. They could have gone anywhere, but those are the two schools that they chose. But they seem very self-actualized. They seem very at ease with themselves. It seems like the process, the mom was saying, was smooth because she didn't pressure them. She didn't stress them. She worked with them. Talk a little bit about, if you can, college admissions is stressful, but how can parents and students prepare now in August instead of trying to sprint to the finish line, kind of like a smooth glide into the
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the perfect time to start, especially starting with senior year. We usually say the summer before is really when you start to lock in on the conversations, talking about what you want to do, where you want to go, that kind of thing. The first thing to do as a parent and with your student is to ensure that you're having the conversations with your student about what their expectations are, what colleges you're considering, also sharing what you can do as a parent from what you can afford to how far you're willing to drive, everything like that. So August is a good time to start those conversations and start to create a list of schools that you want to consider. Few things to note when going through this process is the type of school that is the right size for your student. And a lot of times that comes with visiting the school and actually seeing it. So sometimes students might be great in a larger school where they don't need as much hand holding and they're very independent. And then other times students would do better in a smaller school or a medium-sized school because they appreciate having a smaller community, having a little bit of one-to-one, whether it's with the professors or others in the school or institution. So by looking at sizes of schools, you kind of have an idea. But one thing that I always said to parents in my role as director of admissions is, this is the year where you have real life adult conversations with your student because you're both making the decisions of where to go. It's an
right.
investment in the future. It's an investment financially, of course. And then, of course, as a parent, you are handing your student, your kid over to another, to somebody else as their student. And so all of these things have to fit and feel right. And as a parent, your student might think they know everything, but they really don't. So you might know as a parent what would fit your student better, a smaller school, or if they're going to do okay in a larger school. Because if they're not going to do okay in a larger school and you allow them to drive the bus and you know that it's not going to work, what can happen eventually down the road is that they realize it's not a good fit and they have to transfer out. That's time and money that we want to try to avoid. So I always say, August, create your list. Your list has to include different size schools if you're not sure what size you would do well in, and have that honest conversation with your student. It has to include majors that you're considering. I always say, do not lock yourself into a school where you're locking yourself into a major, because as young adults, 17 and 18 years old, how are you going to know what you want to do for the rest of your life?
Exactly.
You need time to explore, and then with that list, what is realistic? What are their admissions criteria? What are they looking for, and all of that? And then when you have that list, you have to consider everything that school comes with, including distance, and start to make plans to visit. So I always say that, and start to build your calendar, because the calendar really includes the full academic year.
Right.
This is a process that we're talking about. So it includes going to open houses. It includes going to visit outside of open houses. It includes going to accepted student stays and going to overnights if they have them. All of those things are important. And so when you create that list in August, you kind of have your map, and leave it a little bit, a little open, like leave flexibility, because there might be other schools that come to your attention that you didn't expect to have to look into, that you'd want to. But I would say, if you're leaving it up to students, sometimes they're very indecisive. So you can have a list of 20 schools. You need to whittle that down to what's realistic for you to visit. And then once you start visiting, it could be August, it could be September, whenever it is, start to visualize your student there, or if it's a student, visualize yourself there. Can you see yourself in a class of 500?
Right.
Or can you see yourself in a class of 50 or 100? That makes a difference.
Right.
So that's what August looks like. Senior year goes by so quickly.
So fast. Yeah, it does.
It's unbelievable, because you don't realize it until you're going through it. But one thing I always love to tell parents is, you really see the maturity of your student this last year. You see them grow and prepare for college. Yep. Where it might be a little bit shaky now in August, but by next August, when they're getting ready to move in, you see that growth, and you feel a little bit better. But enjoy the ride, because as stressful as a process as it can be, use resources, get information, and enjoy the ride, because your student is growing up, and it happens quick.
Absolutely. Such great advice. As an admissions counselor, I'm going to need to pull some secrets from you, because like I said, we don't know what goes on in those meetings. We don't know what goes on when you all get around the table. And I want to know if you could tell us maybe what might be the one, not the most important, but one important aspect of their application. Like, I like to tell kids, you've got a 4.0, good for you. Everybody does. Everybody's got great GPA, great stats, a great resume. I like to tell kids, what's your it factor? What sets you apart from everybody else? And try to do that in your personal narrative and in your essay for college and for scholarships. But if you could give us one secret, what's that one thing as an admissions counselor you're looking for to put kids in the yes pile instead of the no pile? What would that be?
Definitely their essay. That narrative about them is very important. Now, everything plays a role. The transcript, everything plays a role. But for some students, there's easy A's. There's a student is just a good student. They just have it, and it's easy for them. But what makes you, without having those cookie cutter essays, makes the difference, because we get to see why you're doing this. We get to read about and learn about what is impacting you, what your plans are. And that makes such a difference, not only in the yes or no, but really when we're looking at an application and it's kind of on the fence, right? That can really change the trajectory of where we're going to go with things. We read every single essay. We talk about it. I used to talk to my counselors when I was running the admissions team about, maybe they might mention something that we know is a special scholarship, maybe not even one that we have, but that's an outside scholarship that we know of, or something that might be a little bit concerning. Sometimes we have to reach out to guidance counselors or parents and be like, hey, just heads up, just for safety concerns.
Right.
But reading the essays really allows us to get to know you, because of course you're going to get a letter of recommendation from that math teacher that you had for 2 years that says you were great. We could see that you were great, right?
Right. Right.
But looking at your transcript and seeing that you pulled a C in math or science, and then reading why that is, right? Or, the struggles and how you pushed yourself to get that C makes a difference, right? So
Exactly.
those are some of the things. But, of course, we're looking at the transcript. Some students are just so hard on themselves. If we see growth, then that's all we want to see. We want to see you grow academically. Of course, you're going to be maybe a weaker student as a freshman, but then you're going to grow into your junior year. And then we continue to track senior year. We do look at mid-year grades.
Exactly.
But different schools look at different things. Some schools have so many applicants. They just start with the GPA just because they've got to try to weed
you out. Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. And then other schools are more flexible, where, we're living in a time, especially now with the way finances are, and because students have options that they don't necessarily feel that they have to go to college. They can go to trades. They could do different things, and they're learning a lot with the resources on the internet where they feel like they don't have to, and they're more comfortable about being vocal that they don't want to, that they don't feel like school is for them.
Right.
So the students that we're getting as applicants are very much wanted and appreciated. That's number one. But secondly, they are, we're considering them for this investment, which we understand and realize. So we want to ensure that we are bringing in the right students that are ready for this, because same way parents and students and family members are putting these resources into getting the student here, is we're putting resources in as well. So we want to make sure it's a good match.
Right.
So we definitely have these conversations with students and parents, and when I do presentations, that you want to make sure that all of the pieces fit. It's not just about the grades. It's not just about listing all the extracurriculars or anything like that. And that's another point that I would want to make, is that a lot of the students feel that their extracurricular resume has to be this like elaborate thing. I always tell students, when you're getting closer to senior year, you definitely want to reevaluate all of your obligations, because you need to allot more time to senior year.
Right.
And so you getting off of a team or deciding to relieve yourself of an executive role on a club does not mean that you don't want to be interactive and you don't want to have all of these options show up on your resume. It means that you're being responsible enough to realize that you've got to relieve some of these things in order to pay attention to what's coming next, which is the college application process, the visit process, and all of that.
Right. Exactly. Yep. That's great. Let's talk about money now. Before we talk about financial aid, can you speak to how some kids absolutely know where they want to go, and so they apply early? The difference between early decision, which I know is binding, and early action, and how applying early can help you get your hands on some of that merit money, that institutional aid that many middle-class families so desperately need, because they don't qualify for FAFSA, for Pell Grants, for need-based scholarships. So they're really banking on their child looking amazing, doing amazing, applying early, and getting that merit aid and that institutional money. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes. So for those schools that have those binding agreements, or even, the early options for you, not all schools have it. Some are just on rolling admissions. Not all schools have it, but if they have it, they do have a bucket of money that they're putting aside. And really from that end, it's for the school security of knowing that they have a chunk of students that are definitely going to be coming, or that have high interest in coming, which is always good, because school, this is a business. The school needs to keep running and functioning and everything like that. However, that bucket of money is a bucket. It's not the same thing as a scholarship where, it's just taking off of the tuition or something like that. That is a bucket of money that they are willing to give to students who are willing to say, yes, I want to come, by making this commitment early. But once that money runs out, that money runs out, you
Right.
know? And so once they hit their target and their goal, then then they'll let you know that you have to apply by a certain date, but they might have already accepted students, near that date, and it's all gone. And that's that. I also say the same thing to students that are considering being athletes in colleges. Do not wait until late, because the athletics department has a certain amount that they give to each team, and each team recruits in whatever way they recruit with whatever money that they have.
Right.
Yes. And so you have to also consider that, especially with athletics, they're given this amount of money every year. They might have a current student that needs more, that they've promised some of that money for next year too.
Right.
So, you never know how they're working with that bucket, whereas admissions is working with new incoming students every year. Athletics, I always say, to the earlier the better, because once that money runs out, it's gone as well. Now, they might still recruit you. That's something that a lot of parents don't understand, is that they might still have spots on the team to recruit. Doesn't mean that you're going to get scholarships.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. And especially parents that have student athletes that maybe have not been recruited and they're just walking on to the team. And a lot of times D2 and D3 schools will let you play but won't pay you any scholarship money at all. That's something else that parents maybe need to consider. The FAFSA, financial aid, opens October 1st, and it's been through so many changes, not only because of this administration and the gutting of the Department of Education, but just since I've been a mom over the past decade or so, I've had to fill out financial aid. It used to be January 1st. It moved back to October 1st. It used to be the EFC, is now the SAI. What the families contributed is now an index, a number that nobody knows how they calculate. It's so crazy, and it confuses so many people. So could you talk a little bit about the financial aid process and maybe how they calculate your aid, and how the FAFSA is definitely different than the CSS profile? What I've been trying to explain to a lot of families, one is federal and free, one is private, and the form costs money for you to fill out, but the CSS profile leaves you maybe a space to explain your extenuating circumstances. And those private colleges also are working with a larger endowment to give you more money.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So FAFSA opens October 1st. And one thing to note is that it is a free form. You want to make sure you go to the government website to fill it out, and you can do it on your own, and you can do it free. They do walk you through the steps if you need to. Accountants do offer to do it for you, but you are more than welcome to do it yourself. The first F in FAFSA is free. That's number one. Number two, when you are completing your FAFSA, you are creating a parent profile, which is, it's going to give you a parent ID number, and then a student will have an ID number, which is like their FAFSA ID number forever. Each student that you have will have their own ID number. Very important to know that they use your prior year taxes.
2-year gap window, right? Yep. 2 years. Yep.
Yep. Which means that for students who are applying for 2027 admissions, they're going to be using your 2025 taxes. And something that you had noted and mentioned that I'll touch on is the circumstances that, extenuating circumstances that have to do with your finances, and how you can address some of those. So in 2 years, a lot can change, but that's where we are, right? The FAFSA only takes, the 2 years prior. So you fill in that information, you submit it to the schools. The federal government calculates if you are eligible. Well, first they calculate your SAI, which is a number based on their calculation. I don't have too much experience with the SAI because I left admissions 2 years ago when the SAI was introduced.
Implemented, yep.
Yes. So I have more information on the EFC, which really was based on a calculation. They determined how much your estimated family contribution was. The SAI now is different than that. However, it is their calculation, but they provide that to the college. And if you're applying to 10 colleges will get your FAFSA and will get the same SAI. And then from there, they will inform you of what Pell grants that you will get, which Pell is a federal grant. If you're applying to a school that's within state of where you live, then you can get some type of state aid. Usually they'll determine that there too. For New York, for instance, where I'm located, it's TAP. So they would determine what the TAP is, which is New York State income. And then they share that with the schools. Now the schools get this information, and then they determine what they are giving to you as a student. Now, when you're applying, you might have already been considered for a merit grant based off your application, or an academic scholarship or athletic, different things that the school can give based on your application. They will let you know more immediately. And then when you get your FAFSA, and you submit that, and you want to ensure that you submit all of the schools that you're interested in. If you are interested in a school later on and you want to add that school in, you can go back into your FAFSA and add that school. And you do have a limited amount of slots that you can add, but you can do that. And then from there, the schools will review that and see, well, at least I can speak for our school, for a private small college in New York. What we will do is we will review it and see, based on what our incoming students are getting or not getting from Pell, and then determine based on the SAI if there is more institutional aid that we can give to help close a gap. But that depends on the college. That really depends. If you're
on them,
some colleges, if you apply and you get an academic scholarship, then you kind of have to figure it out from there. Other colleges, they will add in an additional grant. So you might see your financial aid portal, or you'll get a new letter that adds more money after they receive your FAFSA.
Okay.
But one thing to note is that with each school, there is a process that you can typically do where you can write in for extenuating circumstances, meaning that if you have something that has changed in the last few years, which, believe me, as director of admissions, I can tell you,
things do.
Many families had issues and different things that came up. I even had families that what their income reflected was only because they worked overtime, because they had to, in order to make ends meet, right? And so they were kind of penalized for that. So financial aid offices, you can call them, or you can call your admissions counselor who you've been working with and ask them, what can you do to explain these circumstances and be reconsidered for additional aid from the college? And usually what they do is they have some type of a process, some type of a form where they'll allow you to complete it, and then they will review it for you.
Okay.
Typically that could be the director of financial aid. It could be a team meeting that happens, and then they decide what they're going to do from there.
Awesome. That's great information. Tell me about how families possibly can appeal. I'm going through this process right now. So tuition goes up every year, which a lot of people don't pay attention to and don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I pay attention to everything. And as generous as our aid package was, and as many scholarships as my daughter won, I noticed that incrementally every year. I'll give you an example. She attends Bard College.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first got to Bard, it was $85,000. Last year, it was $91,000. This year, it's $99,000, right? So tuition went up, but guess what didn't? Her institutional aid stayed the same. And so I reached out to them, and they said, yeah, the aid and the scholarship we gave her is not going to go. I said, well, I need to appeal. I need more money. I need about $12,000 more dollars, because in my mind, I factored in the performing arts grant that they gave her. We're not Pell eligible anymore, even though I'm not sure why. We were, and then the next year we weren't. I'm still a teacher. I have the same income. I didn't understand that. She has work study, which I think is great. And then I'm accounting for the outside scholarships that I know the check will be here early August, but then there's still a gap. And I'm like, I need to appeal. We need more money. The tuition has gone up. My budget has changed.
Correct.
So can you talk a little bit about the appeals process and how that works? And also how sometimes in the fall, once enrollment has settled and the kids that aren't coming decide not to come, whatever money they were awarded, that goes back in a pool, maybe in a pot, and maybe parents can go ahead and ask for more or appeal for more money maybe in September. How does that work?
So the appeal process for an incoming student is very different than the appeal process and outcome for a returning student.
Okay.
So they're working, I think it's easier to work with incoming families only because, you have you're trying to get the student to come, but also you're able to have those conversations about the extenuating circumstances. Some colleges, many do, actually allow you to submit your other financial aid award letters from
To
other
negotiate, maybe?
negotiate and match.
Okay.
Yes. So that's something that definitely happens. With a returning student, there really isn't funds that are set aside for returning students. It's a good point that you make about tuition going up and paying attention. It's a question that every parent should ask is, how will the tuition go up? How much has it gone up? You might not necessarily know how much it will go up because the financial aid counselors, financial aid director, admissions crew don't necessarily have a say in how much it will go up, but they can share how much it has gone up so that you know that. Schools aren't necessarily or typically freezing tuition for students that are attending. It's been an ongoing conversation, but schools are not necessarily doing that because they're banking on the tuition going up. However, for returning or current students that are coming in, there's a lot of times there's a little wiggle room that schools have, very little wiggle room, where they might have a small fund or a small scholarship that someone has given for specific circumstances. But when we say small, it might not be enough to cover all of the cases that come in. And it's not something that's widely discussed. Everyone knows when you're going through the admissions process that everyone is working on that financial aid process because it's probably the most daunting process of the whole process.
Right.
But once you're a current student, those conversations aren't happening. So you don't realize how many students are asking for additional aid. Here's what I tell students. The same way there are external scholarships for incoming students is the same way there are external scholarships for continuing students.
Right.
Meaning, like, your daughter is getting this reoccurring scholarship that is coming in, which is great. Some don't always do that, but there are companies, businesses, organizations that have scholarships
Right.
for continuing students. And it's just money that's sitting there that's untouched.
Right.
It's just untouched. It goes from, local, car dealerships, banks, different things like that locally, to wider companies like a Coca-Cola or a Colgate or something like that has these scholarships.
Right.
And all they ask is for you to write an essay, and they'll ask for a transcript, a current transcript, to show that you're enrolled and that you're doing well. Some of them might have, something linked to it where it has to be a specific major, or you have to be a part of a specific sport or whatever it is. But there is that money out there, which is typically easier to get than the school having money allotted aside, because that money that's allotted aside is for very specific circumstances, and it's not the bucket that incoming students have to work with.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Let's talk about, if we can for a moment, let's shift to enrollment and admissions numbers. Over the past week, we've all seen the headlines in the news about Howard possibly over-enrolling.
Right.
And then going ahead and letting 502 students, unenrolling them because of various reasons: finances, immunization records, scholarships that haven't posted, payment plans that weren't put in place. Can you talk a little bit about how over-enrolling is not uncommon with colleges? Like, we know this is a business, but I don't know if it's common for so many students to be let go at once. As the professional, can you speak to that? Were we all just overreacting, or was something else different, in your opinion, going on in this situation?
So my type of college, we're going to take as many students as we can, as a smaller private school. So I don't have too much experience in actually dealing with that. We have specific programs where we have a number of students that we can accept. For instance, we have an honors program that has a high paying tuition scholarship, and it comes with perks like going to England and all of that, right? Where we are very transparent that we have this amount of slots available. And once those slots are available, we will have a wait list, because we understand that if you have this opportunity with us, then we know you have it with other people as well. So even if you say yes to us and you decide later on that you don't want to come, then we can go to our wait list. But typically programs like that, they stay pretty consistent. They stay as is. However, I don't think it's an overreaction on the parents' part. I was definitely staying in tune on what was going on with Howard, because as a parent, and as someone in higher education, it was something that you really couldn't avoid. It went from hearing about like one thing until it really making mainstream media and headlines on this unfortunate thing that happened to really the students and the families that were planning on attending. There's a lot that goes into it. You are investing, of course, your student going, and there was a lot that went around the financial aid and deadlines and everything like that. But also realize these parents started buying things for dorm rooms. They started making plans. They started buying flights. They had hotel rooms booked, and they may have had other offers that they let go of from other schools. And when you let go of other offers from other schools, sometimes you're letting go of the scholarships as well. So they may be happy to take you, but they've taken that money and given it to somebody else.
Exactly.
So, it was, their reaction, and them feeling disheartened about this, was not an overreaction, especially because there seemed to be varying dates and information that was shared with different people. And it's not really a frenzy that you want to have, and after going through a senior year of
Right.
all of the things that you had to go through, and figuring out how you're going to make this all work. I always say, especially with HBCUs, and my daughter is at an HBCU as well, because of what they are and what they are to our community. You're not going to get students that are in the immediate area like other colleges and institutions get. You're getting people from all over the country.
Right.
So the process senior year, when you make that decision that we're going to that school, it's a little bit different because there's a lot more to consider and to plan for, as opposed to someone who's going away 2 or 3 hours away.
Right.
2 or 3 hour flight is different than 2 3 hour car ride.
All right.
Or,
Exactly.
or 7 hour flight, right? So,
right.
Or car ride. So, that's something to consider. I did watch a lot of the videos and I saw a lot of the comments and, from students and parents on how upset they were. And, the students were more upset that like their dreams were crushed. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what the next steps were. And so they took to social media, as they know how to in their generation, and try to figure it out. I was happy to see that, the turnaround in getting responses, for parents. And I saw some parents even had to drive there and go there and
in person. Yeah,
and figure it out. And as parents, sometimes we have to do that. We have to ensure that we just need to get the information. One thing that I will say, and, I think I shared with you, Laverne, is that with the financial aid process, this is the first time students at this age have involvement with finances.
right.
So it is so important
Yep.
for everyone to be on the same page, but it's also just as important to understand and realize that even when the student is enrolled in school and going to the financial aid office and getting the information, they're asking the questions their parents asked them to ask, and they're getting the information that they were told. Like, they don't even understand what a lot of this is or what they're saying or anything like that. But, a parent could say, hey, I'm calling the financial aid office. They're not answering. Go over there and find out. They have no idea what they're getting into or what they're saying or anything like that. So it's, I always say it's important for parents and students to have a really good rapport about this is like the first step of adulthood. This is the first step of like, understanding this stuff. So we're going to work on it together. We're not always going to understand everything because, maybe we've never been through the college process, or even if we have with another student of ours, every school is different.
Right.
So we're going to build on this together. And then, every now and then I might have to explain it to a financial aid officer that I have to speak to at my students, at my daughter's school. Excuse me. That, hey, like, she came and she got that information. She has no idea what it meant. And she did not discuss it or translate it to me the way that you said it to her.
Right.
So that's important to know as well.
I was saying this the other day to someone that I don't think a lot of us do a good enough job, or people in the space, just educating the parents and the students. I know a lot of people that do. They have FAFSA night and college night and
Yeah.
this event, and it's almost like pulling teeth getting people to come and attend. They have to feed them. You got food, you got gift cards you're giving away. But on the flip side of that, some people do want the information. There's first gen, there's parents that didn't go to college themselves. They don't know what's going on. They have no idea about any of this and they're confused. And what was heartbreaking also, I saw a couple stories of some homeless students that don't have access to email, that don't have a caring adult or a parent in their corner to help them. Many of them took the bus to that school to try and rectify the situation. I just think we need to do a better job of explaining and trying to hold space for and trying to help our most vulnerable students.
Yes.
In my opinion, you know what I mean?
Sure. And we have students that you might not have English speaking parents. We have first gen, like you said, and so there's all of these different factors that come in when we are working with these families. And I've had conversations with people as director of admissions. I've had conversations with parents after looking at all the numbers that maybe now is not the right time to attend this school. Like, and as a smaller college, we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Bigger college, there's just so much going on. But I think it's important to note that a financial aid counselor is a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to walk you through it.
Right.
And it's important that financial aid nights and all of those things are great, but it's so much information to consume in the process of selecting a college.
Right.
So it's important to continuously educate students and families throughout the 4 years about the different things, and especially with changes like the FAFSA. That's just one example of things that have changed. Things can change within the institution. Things can change with a scholarship or grant. You might have to remind somebody that the grant was only for 1 year, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's important to have that understanding. A lot of times colleges do financial aid workshops and information workshops. It's just the student has to go to it and pay attention that these things are happening. But that's a conversation that a parent has to have as well.
Exactly.
Whatever they're offering, whatever they're doing, make sure that you just at least are tapped in to see if it relates to you in any sort of way. Also important to note that, you might have a scholarship that you were awarded or given that was based on a major, and then you switch your major, or based on a sport as an athlete. And what happens? It's okay for you to ask these questions. What happens if so and so no longer wants to play or gets injured?
Right.
What happens with that money? Because you need to know, you need to plan as best as possible for what's unexpected. And what should be always expected is that tuition would go up, right? But then
exactly.
Unexpected, but people don't always know that, and unfortunately, some people learn the hard way. And you want to give your student the best outcome without, being stressed or breaking the bank or not having a plan in place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great information. One last thing I wanted to talk about, scholarship displacement that a lot of people kind of find out the hard way exists when the outside third party scholarships you've won and worked so hard to win and get start rolling in, and that particular college and financial aid department starts subtracting dollar for dollar from your aid package due to this outside scholarships you got. For example, say you have a $5,000 balance and you've got that scholarship money on the way. Instead of applying it to the balance, they subtract from your Pell Grant, or subtract from your loans, or subtract from whatever academic or arts or institutional grant that they gave you. Can you speak to that and how a lot of people don't even know that exists?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that exists. So they might subtract from a merit scholarship, academic scholarship. Depending on the school, a lot of times they might have a percentage that they're, a discount percentage that they're able to give to each student. And then after that, it has to come out of pocket. That's something that all families should ask, is how that is. Okay, so this academic is based on the grades. Like, that's not going to go anywhere if I get anything else, right? Or whatever it is. Asking the question really avoids a lot, but unfortunately, parents don't know to ask that question.
Right.
So there's lots of guides out there that can help you in all the sections of the application process, including financial aid. But at that point, when the outside scholarship comes in and they're starting to take other monies away, um, you have to, number one, pay attention to the scholarship letter or information that's given in the scholarship, because that usually is noted there as well. Number two, you have to, if that is a case and you know your son or daughter is applying for outside scholarships, then that can be the case that you make to the financial aid. Like, hey, you're giving us this, what we're applying for this because we need to close the gap. So can you guarantee me that this amount is not going to be deducted off of something else
Right.
after the fact, right? Because even though it is a scholarship, it's not the school scholarship money that's being taken away. You know, it's they were still willing to lose that, you know, to give that money, that scholarship money. So you should be able to give that. But there are families and there are students where that does happen. And unfortunately, by the time it happens, and you realize it, and you were banking on that money to add to your balance or to closing the gap.
Right.
They'll show you financial aid letters. They'll show you notations on the website. They'll show you or tell you that they covered it at, you know, an open house or a financial aid seminar. And so at that point, you definitely have to plan and bank that you're going to have to close that gap somehow. And knowing also that the scholarship is sent to the school versus sent to you, because that's also
Right.
something that
That's
people
a huge factor. Yeah.
yeah, people don't realize. They just think, oh yeah, so and so is giving me my scholarship, and they're thinking that they're going to get the check, and then they get a letter from whatever organization or corporation saying, please send us the acceptance letter from the school so that we can send them the check.
Directly to the school.
Yes, yes. And they might have plans for that. You know, I've seen and heard it that they've had plans, and we know we're going to use that money to go dorm shopping and to prepare you for school. And, you know, they just don't realize it. So that's also, you know, something to check out and to ensure that you're looking into as well. You know, schools, it's a lot of information that they're sharing, to be honest with you, but some of the things you just don't know to ask the questions. You know, you just don't know to ask the questions. But if you ask the questions, then the school will tell you. You know,
Right.
they will tell you. You know, and if you're not getting an answer from a school, I always say if you don't get an answer from a school, then you just got to kind of reconsider that, because
Right.
between your admissions counselor, between your financial aid counselor, they should be able to answer all of your questions and
Someone
do it
you
with
can talk
confidence.
to.
Yep, do it with confidence. And sometimes as parents, you might say, you know what, I'm going to have a lot more questions. Can I have your contact information, you know, so that you're like my point person? And
Exactly.
even that is something that a lot of schools should be able to do as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
This is great information. Is there anything we haven't talked about yet, Samantha, that you think is important for students and parents to know, or our listeners to know, that we haven't touched on yet?
yeah, I would say the one thing that I always talk to students and families about is visiting the schools. And I already mentioned the open houses and stuff like that happens usually in the fall, and then there's like accepted students days that happen in the spring. But we plan everything for an open house. If we could plan the weather at an open house, we would. We plan from right. So we plan everything from the room you're going to sit in, who you're going to hear from, the videos you're going to see, the students that are giving tours.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is selected. I always tell students and families the best thing to do is to go on an off day. All of the high schools give you some days that you can go and just take a tour at a school.
Mm-hmm.
Take opportunity and do that. I want you to go on a Tuesday afternoon at noon. Go just on a campus tour. All of the colleges have campus tours daily. You can just go on a daily campus tour when school's in session and it's not a weekend, and just see what it's like, see what the students are doing, and then ask them questions. They'll be very honest with you if you ask questions. The things that I learned going on tour with my daughter was so insightful, because the tour guides were like, yeah. And then I walked around and just asked students questions, you know? So I think that really, seeing the energy of the school outside of an open house really makes a difference. And I always say, the college visit does not begin when you get there. It begins when you get in the car. You have to visualize how far it is and if you can drive that far. You've got to visualize, what's in the area. If so and so needs anything from Tylenol to a quick bite to eat. If you have a kid who's a snacker who likes to order a lot or whatever, what's in the area, because sometimes some of these areas are very overpopulated and have lots of colleges. Great. Other times they might be upstate in whatever state you are, or downstate, or part of the state that there's like really nothing going on there, and the closest thing is a Walmart that's like 45 minutes away. So you have to always look at that as well, and be honest if you can see yourself there, and you will get that feeling when you get on a college campus if it works for you or if it doesn't work for you. So that's something that I definitely want to encourage parents to do, because right now, years ago it was virtual tours and people thought they had it covered.
Right.
Now it's with TikTok, and you really have to go and see for yourself, because what we also see happening is that students get to colleges and then they just like it, and it really starts to ruin their experience. And they either, then mom and dad has to drive the 3 hours or 7 hours to move you off campus because you're not happy, or or you spend a semester there and you're unhappy, and it shows in your academics. And when you transfer, that can hurt you as well.
So. Exactly. We went through that. One of my twins went to Hofstra, hated it, transferred, came back home, went to UMass. So absolutely, you got to put your 2 feet on the campus, put your feet in the grass, kind of get a feel for it, see if this is your place that you're going to be calling home, away from home, for the next 4 years, right? So such great information. Awesome. Samantha, thank you so much. This has been eye-opening. It's been informational. I'm so happy that we connected and I got to talk to you. So remember, everyone, the Common App is open. Scholarships are year-round. Make sure that you take your time doing all of this and filling out all this information. And if you need help, you know where to go. Samantha, again, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And that's all that we have today for Scholarship Tea with me. And I'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Take care.
And yeah.